This is Steeple of Quill Canyon, a Triple W inspired thing that I made around in August. Now, the only reason I made this is because I was talking about it with a friend and they would have liked to see something like it, so I tried making it for fun. To kind of just experiment with the whole style because I never really made it. The progression of this steeple works differently, where you need to get buttons to progress and also deactivate them to progress, as you will see throughout. These actually use the same mechanics as Triple W, as in just the iconic falling platforms with their variants. And it does assume that the player already knows, so they are kind of just used freely here. There are a few other things around that Triple W didn't really have all that much, like wall hops, although they're not super common here either. There are multiple sections like this where they're partially netted, but they are less and less common the further you go out. Every kill brick in this steeple is an insta-kill, as it's meant to be more punishing as it goes on. This is the part where you backtrack after deactivating a button. This is the main way that you will be progressing through the gameplay in this steeple. There are also buttons and button deactivators that you have to avoid along the way, like shown there. They're indicated with a red outline and a little texture. I added a new variant here, where you just simply walk off the platform to kind of keep things fresh, because I didn't want to just outright copy Triple W stuff without introducing anything new. Once you press that button, you traverse the same gameplay, and then go to a new route, which takes you to the end of floor 1 pretty much. Now this is floor 2, and the first thing you have to do is go out on this track to go out and get a button in order to progress further. That minecart unfortunately doesn't move. This also introduces the button deactivators that you have to avoid. A lot of these signs are just random stupid things that I left from development. They don't really serve any purpose. They're kind of just there. As you can see, you have to really stay on your toes with this steeple because there are a lot of insta-kills and a lot of punishing points. And I mean a lot. I think the punishment is the only reason this is high kata, because without it I think this would be maybe low. You can see that I tried to use these falling platforms a little bit differently compared to how Triple W uses theirs. And there's a below it too. But personally, I'm pretty satisfied with the way that I executed these falling platforms. They're done pretty smoothly. There is button progress here, where you can now go from the start of the floor to that point, skipping at least a minute of gameplay. I also tried to do a decent bit with the wall hops, even if people don't like wall hops. They were more so in my own favor, just because I thought they were fun to pull off. That button progress that you saw is one of the only points that will be... When it comes to button progress, that's the only point in the steeple where it's actually just there, where there's a platform to kind of help you skip gameplay. We're nearing the end of floor 2, where you simply just get a button before backtracking a couple of jumps. It makes for some nice progression. Helps me come up with some interesting ideas as well. And now we're on floor 3. Like Triple W, this steeple uses entirely Windows 96 music. and the design is partially inspired off the album Plume Valley, which the name Quill Canyon is actually a spin-off of those two words. We're met with a mini netted section here, but right away you have to go out and get a button. Personally, I really like how this section was done. The progression of it was nicely executed. Though it does get pretty scary here, even though it's only floor 3. I introduced a new way that these platforms are used. I just turn them into head hitters, basically. It sounds like it's pretty inconsistent, but it's really more consistent than you think to pull off. After getting that button, you now go back up to do the netted jump. As you go on, you notice that the netted sections in a steeple don't really last that long, as it focuses more on the sections that are either not netted or over in insta-kill. And there's a new way that these are used. You actually use them to reduce your jump height and avoid the insta-kill above. That's probably my favorite way of using them when it comes to innovating with new ways to kind of integrate it into the gameplay. Some sections will have small recovery parts like those below, in case they're too difficult, because I didn't want to outright nerf them. After this totally seamless transition, you find yourself on floor 4, the start of the second half of the steeple. This half of the steeple has a sunrise, kind of like Plume Valley, since you notice in the cover under the trees it's kind of nighttime, but above that it's a sunrise. The sign lies to you about 6 being the shortest floor, but I just felt like lying to the player. So first timers are really in for it. Floor 4 starts out with some really punishing gameplay, at most points at least. Although the gameplay really isn't hard. A lot of this stuff is a lot easier than it looks, but that doesn't really make it any less stressful. Here the jump height reduction mechanic is used a little bit more, although I do wish I could expand it on it a little bit more. The steeple isn't that long, so I didn't really get many opportunities to do so. But I think the way it was done in here was pretty nice. At this point, a lot of the netted parts are just you traversing on the top of terrain. There's not really many spots where you can fall and save yourself, at least on the upper floors. After this wall hop, you're pretty much at the button deactivator, which you can use to progress to floor 5 now. Which begins right off the bat with a insta-kill, because I want it to be punishing. Although again, the gameplay isn't really that bad, if you're good at camera control and overall nerve control. Here, a set of wall hops with recovery below them, because people kind of wanted it, so I had no choice but to add it, since my best interest also lied within having people be able to enjoy this steeple. Although that didn't stop it from being as punishing as it is now. There's a common trend with a small net for a couple of jumps or less, followed by unnetted gameplay like this. After getting that button deactivated, you now have to backtrack to the second half of floor 5. With that wall hop over an insta-kill. Except you use new platforms to climb up past that point. And now we're pretty much on floor 6. Floor 6 is the longest floor, not by a super large margin, but it is noticeably pretty long, and it's also pretty hard. I was originally going to make this floor longer, however, people were getting kind of tired of the long floor trend that I was setting with things like Raging Tempest and Umbra Market, so I cut off a portion of the planned progression with this floor. It did kind of suck to do that, but this floor is still really good as it is. And it is stressful as hell. I've been here legit, and it's really scary the amount of opportunities that come up where you can just lose your progress and have to jump down or either backtrack or just you die entirely. There's a little underhang section here that I really like. I think it utilizes the terrain of the steeple pretty well, rather than just feeling like they were built separately and exist separately. This jump isn't that high, I was just being kind of stupid. I also wish I used these head hitter falling platforms more often. They're not really as inconsistent as they look. The gameplay in this part is really nice. I like the camera control that I did for it, and I honestly wish I did way more of it because camera control is just really fun to pull off. This is around the halfway point, and I start using these scary combinations of falling platforms and wall hops, where you can do them multiple ways, but the way I did it on video is the main way that I do it. Also, you can flick here, but I built these with alignment keys in mind, which is why I tried to do it. Then I tried to flick, but I was like, forget that. That is why I kept the netted though. I like to keep it difficult and interesting. And then there's the TO EV thin studs that I felt like putting. We're now pretty much at the halfway point. So you just have the third quadrant in the final stretch, and I just did not put the Toyam jump here. After the jump that my friend calls the ball jump, we're now at the third quadrant, which resides with unnetted gameplay. And as I could imagine, is really stressful here. It's kind of all or nothing at this point. I also wish I used those trusses more, where you don't flick. You can see that it doesn't really hold back with the insta-kill usage at all. I wanted to be really punishing with this floor, and I think I did that pretty well. After this scary wall hop, we're pretty much on the final stretch now. Which I had a little bit of a hard time building because I don't really do not netted jumps. I don't really do jump change like this. I don't like doing them, but it's in classic Triple W fashion, so might as well. Once you get here, you pretty much win because it's netted below. I wish I didn't have to net it, but it's cool enough. And that's the whole steeple. This took around 2 months to make. I did have a little pause back around in August, but I eventually picked it back up that same month. There were a lot of things stopping me that month, so it was pretty tough to build this, especially when trying to get back into the whole groove with it. But honestly, I'm really proud of it. I do think this is one of my best steeples, or just best towers in terms of how gameplay is executed. Although I do think there's a lot of things I could have improved on, but I won't let that stop me from being satisfied with it. I don't think I'll be doing more Triple W inspired things in the future. I kind of just wanted to see how that territory was like because I never really built like that, and I wanted to do something new. And I did have a lot of fun building this, like a lot of fun. Maybe someday I'll expand on it, but who knows. Thank you.